Hello, I'm John Coleman from ApocatastasisInstitute, an institute for the humanities and alternative college and high school here on New Milford, Connecticut. This recording is to promote Dr. James Fetzer's course, Conspiracy 101, Critical Thinking and Conspiracy Theories. And I lately listened to someone kind of pointing out our time in the world, and he was mentioning that we have all of the podcasts and we have all of this information, but what's often lacking is systemizing it and really putting it into a structure. And I think when it comes to this particular topic of current events, recent historical events, and so forth, we're really contributing to that organization of knowledge. There's endless podcasts and broadcasts, and they're great, but this course really, I think, takes the next step. Of systematizing knowledge and putting it into an overall framework. So, with that being said, welcome, Dr. Fetzer, and tell us a bit about this course.
Oh, thank you, John, so very much. I'm simply delighted to have this opportunity. I'm a former Marine Corps officer and retired professor of philosophy who offered courses in critical thinking, logic, and scientific reasoning for 35 years. And you can flip where we can see the schedule, John. Yes, I want to give something back to all of those out there in the community who might want to learn how to analyze these things. It's like the difference between giving a man a fish and teaching him how to fish. I want to inculcate in my students the principles that apply to analyze these matters while using the most significant and controversial cases in recent American history as illustrations. And that, of course, would include the greatest murder mystery of them all, JFK. It would also include the atrocities of 9/11, which you're going to be surprised to learn was an inside job, collusion between the American government and that of another nation, widely regarded as our strongest ally, but which actually has used the United States as a resource to exploit. The moon landings, which may be the greatest hoax of all because it was worldwide to take the world in on a theory, a story, a narrative that even was impossible to achieve at the time. But as a preliminary to that, and a host of others we're going to explore, including, for example, the death of Senator Paul Wellstone in Minnesota, which occurred just 60 miles north of my office at the time on the Duluth campus of the University of Minnesota, where I investigated the case up close and personal, wrote a series of articles about it in alternative newspaper in Duluth, was almost immediately featured on Coast to Coast with a neon pundit who wanted to debunk, but I knew already too much for that to work. Published a book, American Assassination, The Strange Death of Senator Paul Wellstone. Invited an expert in electromagnetism from Australia, John P. Costello, to join me where we were tromping around in the snow in 35 below zero weather, picking up pieces of the charred fuselage. What I'm telling you is I'm dealing with issues where I have vast experience. I brought together experts, the best to ever study the case with regard to JFK, and initiated a program of collaborative research that has panned out very, very powerfully. Because when you get experts together, in essence, they're critiquing one another's work, and the probability of getting things wrong becomes dramatically reduced. And I did that not only with regard to JFK, where I've now published 4 collections of studies, the most recent being JFK, Who, How, and Why, Solving the World's Greatest Murder Mystery, 2017, but where I also founded Scholars for 9/11 Truth in 2005 and brought together hundreds of experts from around the world, and where already we'd had so much success that when Alex Jones organized his American Scholars Conference in Los Angeles in 2006, he invited me to be the keynote speaker. And when C-SPAN did their panel, videoed the panel discussion on Sunday, the 4 speakers were all members of Scholars. Alex moderated, and then we had Steve Jones, whom I'd invited to be my co-chair, who was a physicist from BYU, Bob Bauman, who'd been an ace shooting down planes in Vietnam over 101, and he had a PhD in nuclear engineering from Caltech and had been the Star Wars advisor to Reagan and Ford. Webster Tarpley had published a brilliant book called Synthetic Terror, 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in the USA. And myself as a founder of Scholars, where I gave a top 10 reasons we know that the hijackers were fake. What I want you to understand is that I've been in the trenches doing the work, bringing together the expert, publishing the books, and I've done it again and again and again, including Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, Orlando and Dallas, Charlottesville, Parkland, Las Vegas, and more, with tremendous success. In fact, so much success that Amazon has banned 6 of my books. And that's not because we got things wrong. It's because we got things right. And those of you who are paying attention may know that Grok 4, this brilliant Elon Musk interaction of 4 different powerful AI systems, have been putting out so much truth that they're having to censor Grok. They're having to censor it. So I won't give you all the skinny. And now if you go to some of these AI programs, you get pedestrian accounts of, oh yeah, Lee Oswald shot JFK. When Lee Oswald cannot have shot JFK because he was in the doorway of the book depository when the motorcade passed by. Now, to get deep into understanding how to sort things out, I have to provide a mini course on critical thinking. So you're also going to learn a lot about the nature of thought, the nature of mentality, where thinking doesn't take place in words alone, but in more broadly what are known as signs, including images, paintings, photographs, maps, and so forth that resemble what they stand for. Indices, which are causes and effect. This is smoke and heat can represent fire, flames, ashes, red dots in an elevated temperature, perhaps a measles. Sometimes it requires expertise to diagnose. But where language is central, because the higher species, of which Homo sapiens represents the highest form of mental development among all the species, though you would discover if you were to read my book, The Evolution of Intelligence, that mind has emerged in more primitive forms from the lower species to the higher, which is inevitable given our evolutionary development. You're going to learn the nature of mentality, but also the central role of arguments and of what are known as symbols, which are simply made up to stand for other things. Thus, a painting of a horse resembles a horse because it looks like it. Droppings or prints in the dirt can be effects of a horse passing. And so, on the one hand, those are icons, those are indices. And then we have symbols. The word horse doesn't look like a horse, doesn't run any races or win them. And once we get to the level of symbolic mentality, we can talk about things that are far removed in space and time, do not even exist, imaginary, hypothetical, huge advance where the human species exemplifies this to the highest degree. Then I'll explain about the central role of language and of arguments. We all know everyone's entitled to an opinion, but not all opinions are equal. The question becomes, can you support your opinion with evidence, with good reasons? And having good reasons for an opinion constitutes an argument. It's not just fisticuffs or shouting and screaming, but having an intellectual exchange to determine what is more likely to be true and what is not, where Sir Karl Popper emphasized that our most effective technique in the search for truth is free and open debate. So you're going to get an introduction to common mistakes, how to avoid them, and how to apply scientific reasoning to conspiracy theories. Or bear in mind, because they're theories, they can be evaluated by the same principle as theories in science. I'll explain how it can be done. So if you want to learn how to think things through, I think this might be for you. All the materials are provided with a course. You can do it from the comfort of your home because it's online Wednesday night, 7 to 9 West Central Time on Wednesdays. I encourage you to check it out. And just as an appetizer to whet your appetite, I'm providing a link to a false flag stage event checklist that I prepared with Brian Davidson, a private investigator from Houston, Texas, where we enumerate criteria that can be applied to evaluate a case to determine whether it's likely to be real or contrived, with lots of links. So check it out. If you like what you see there, this might be a course for you. There is a tuition, $150 for the course, 15 classes, semester long with a winter break. That's just $10 a class. Check it out. See if that sounds like something you'd want to do. I'd be glad to have you there. And you'll have opportunities to raise questions and interact and sort things out. Thank you, John, for this opportunity. I look forward to it, giving back to the public here in America, from which I myself have derived so many benefits. Thank you, John, very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for that rundown, Dr. Fetzer, for your class there. Now, besides the link you mentioned, which is indeed below in the description, also there is the class website for Dr. Fetzer, which will have the PDF here, and you can read the breakdown week by week and the other appropriate details. And once again, this is a great chance, I suggest to interested students, to really systematize a lot of things. We have moon landing or 9/11 and so forth and so forth. Dr. Fetzer here is offering a way to really present that in a unified manner, and that is very difficult to get. As much as the general media is where we get our podcast, it's difficult to get that overall that Dr. Fetzer is offering. So do consider that. Any final words there, Doctor?
No, I much appreciate those add-ons, and of course, we work our way up to some of the most recent complex and controversial cases, including Pizzagate. Was that real or an illusion? I'm sorry to say it's all too real. And the Jeffrey Epstein events are underlining how child sex trafficking has become a fundamental part of political life here in the U.S. and abroad. The pandemic, how they manufactured what was supposed to be a international health threat, but which actually posed virtually none, and then used the opportunity to create a vaccine that would bring about devastating consequences. And last but not least, the official history of World War II, because we have been propagandized into believing a whole lot of stories that have the status of myth rather than fact. These are things you want to learn to be equipped intellectually to deal with the complexities of life as we encounter it today. I thank you, John, once again for this opportunity.
Interested students may write us at our typical address, ApocatastasisInstitute at AOL.com, and also on the subsite where you can get the PDF, which is displayed here. You can also just fill out the enrollment form. So either way, you can just directly email us or fill out the form there, but we'll get you signed up. And with that, Dr. Fetzer, thank you. And to the audience, thank you for considering this fine course.